rather than coming out and explicitly telling you what the concept of starting with the why is, or what the concept of the golden circle, as Simon Sinek refers to it, is, I think it would be great for us to actually work through some of these things so that we come to a sense of how we are already presenting ourselves. And by tapping into some of the concepts of the golden circle and starting with why, how we can convey that same sense of what we believe in so that people buy into it and stay loyal to our products and services. As entrepreneurs, as many of you are, I think you are used to showing up and facing your vulnerability. I think it takes a lot of courage to do what you do and to go out on your own. To build businesses, particularly in our part of the world, is not easy. So I think the concepts that are really expressed here, including the vulnerability that is required to actually delve into them, are something that a lot of you should be able to tap into quite easily. So I want you to share something daringly vulnerable about yourself, about your situation. When I and Rishma, was my partner, had our discussion, it struck me as well that in being vulnerable, you also get to really see how what you think is a unique situation may not actually be that unique. And I think one of the powers of programs like GCIC is really building that network of people that are maybe working in a different industry, but are still going through the same things that you are. And it's definitely a resource for you to tap into moving forward during the program and even beyond that, just having that sharing ability.
I had a conversation with, an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, a couple of days ago. And one of the things that he said to me was that everybody has to watch their mental health right now. And he was saying, he actually shared with me that he said to me, I'm seeing a therapist, right? And I'm not going mad, but I've had to have that intervention. And he said that, I would recommend that, for you as well as I've done for many other people, just to sort of like, help to navigate this whole pandemic and its negative externalities on you personally, on your business, on your family life, and how it's disrupted so many things. So I just think that that's another thing that we shouldn't push this whole issue of mental health under the carpet right now, because we are going through a pandemic. We are entrepreneurs. Yeah. We don't get a monthly salary. We have payroll to meet. We have products to get out there. We've got to sell. You've got to do your marketing. You've got to do your communications. And but at a personal level, I mean, you're like messed up big time.
No, and it's a real thing, and I'm very happy you brought that up, Ruka, because really I think what a lot of people can agree on, regardless of whether you're an entrepreneur or not, during this pandemic, it feels like a lot of the different aspects of what were previously distinct aspects of our lives have really been fused together. You're working from home. If you're not, you are teaching your children at home, but you're still trying to make all of that work in the context of business as usual. You have employees who are depending on you for their monthly salaries, not even to mention if you'll be able to pay yourself. So it's a real thing. And I think coming from a context where mental health is very rarely talked about or considered an issue, I think it's phenomenal that GCIC is actually giving the space in the room to actually even bring up the topic and make people know that it's okay to speak about it and reach out. So definitely, I appreciate you bringing that up as well, because it would be great to get some reactions from that portion of the discussion. What makes you different from any other company doing the exact same thing? And I know we have a number of different companies. So anyone want to share any reactions to that prompt?
Okay, so I'd say I quickly jotted down 3 things. One being the people, that makes the brand extremely unique in the sense that, first of all, we have a great creative visionary. I'm not saying that just because she's sitting next to me, but I definitely think That's one of the things that definitely sets the brand apart from so many other companies in the industry. And I think we have a solid team. It's not necessarily the most experienced team. It's not necessarily the team that, you know, anybody would say has individuals have a certain resume, but I think the way we work, how we collaborate, how we share, and how we share some of our vulnerabilities in itself makes the team and the company extremely strong. And because of that, our product is strong, which is also extremely unique in the sense that it's able to tap into that psychological need of our customer, which is something that I truly believe the brand owns and does extremely well. So yeah, those would be the two things that I'd say are huge wins for Christy Brown.
Excellent. And I love the fact that you started out with the people rather than the product. I think that in itself is really telling. I think we're already seeing some threads here as to not only what makes GCIC different, but also you see the kind of selection in terms of the companies that you're picking are also thinking quite differently as well. So I'm curious to see how that plays out in the next set of breakouts that we have. We're going to next be delving into how you work. So in this breakout activity, I'd like you to talk about how people know who you are and what you stand for based on your product and service.
I think what I noticed when everybody was speaking was we all have a perception of what we bring to the table, but it's very interesting to see what the other person sees about, you know, our brand or our personality or our whys based on what they know. Because sometimes you think it's something that appeals to somebody, but they're also seeing it, you know, in a different light. So perhaps I would say that would be an interesting add to the conversation.
Okay. That's a really interesting and a very good point, because a lot of the time, what a lot of people don't realize is that much as this is a very introspective process, a lot of it is ultimately looking at what are we projecting to the world. So that external facing piece is extremely relevant here as well. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
I need to respond to what you just said, particularly because we have entrepreneurs in the room. And again, one of the things that we speak about in the GCIC program is about thought leadership and leading with your thoughts, right? And how you project yourself. So it's not necessarily, it's not only about entrepreneurship and commercial enterprise and selling certain goods and services, but how do you also demonstrate leadership of thought? Will you allow yourself to put yourself in a position whereby you are, I know Selassie does a lot of this. I know that CB does a lot of this as well. Others might, maybe Cynthia. I know I'm saying people that I know, but you know, putting yourself in front of the Africa Wharton Business School and you know, being a panelist and showing to the world that we're a thoughtful organization. And you may think, oh, so what? You know, what being on the panel, you know, with the right organization, with the right institution, you know, how does that, you know, how does that help me? You know, it helps you a great deal, because you are demonstrating your brand essence, you know, your brand aesthetics, what makes you unique, and that draws people to you. It could be, it draws the ecosystem to you, ecosystems support to you, and these are the things that actually draw you to that place where you need to go in, you know, in different seasons of life. I don't want to say it draws you to, takes you to your destination, because life is a journey and not a destination, right? So yeah, so I just thought I should add that point to entrepreneurship. Is not only about trading, it's not only about commercial activity, but it's also, and I think this is really what makes all of you unique, what makes our incubator unique, is also really drawing on that leadership of thought, that intellectual capital that you have, recognizing that at any one time you have that capital, and how do I use it, project it, demonstrate it to the right people, and thereby grow grow my brand. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the key word there was definitely the right people, the right context. Because like you said, particularly for entrepreneurs who have a number of things going on and a number of responsibilities, being able to really hone in on where the right channel is for that expression, where you're going to have like-minded people who are going to buy into what you believe in, is extremely important. I think there are a number of different reports, there are a number of different TV shows, there are a number of different opportunities that you can definitely tap into for the sake of just publicity. But ultimately, which one is going to be the one that gets you to your key people, your key audience, your key opportunities? So thanks for sharing that. We're finally tapping into the why. Why do you believe in what you believe in? And this, of course, relates to your business. I was saying that the purpose of this exercise was really to hone in on a key point in this whole concept of starting with why and the golden circle. The fact that when people are buying something from you, and that could be your product, that could be your service, that could be your value or whatever you are showing as your value, they're not buying what you do, they're buying why you do it. And this is linked to a concept known as the golden circle. So Simon Sinek presents this as different layers, which you can, depending on your perspective, look at in different ways. I like to see it from a layering perspective, where in a lot of our interactions with people, we are really only dealing at the surface, which is really unfortunate, because even from the short discussions that we've had today, I'm sure you've realized that there's so much more that you can delve into with the counterparts in the room and learn about, right? But very often we are pressed for time, there's a lot going on, and we maybe have a split second to make an impression, and we start with the what. And every company knows how to do this, right? Every company hopefully knows what it is that they do. And these are often the products and services that you sell. Fewer companies will be able to communicate how they go about that process. So that could be what makes you unique in that compared to your competitors. Do you have a proprietary product or maybe an algorithm that helps you do this? Cynthia spoke about the fact that they tend to tap into working with a lot of millennials, building a new age law firm that's mindful of newer ways of doing things and being mindful of technology while they do it. A lot of companies can speak to the how as well. But the best companies really know how to communicate from this core space at a much deeper level, and that's the why. And the why, despite the fact that your old businesses, is really not about money. Money is the means to an end. Money is the end goal. It's a result. It's not about the money that you're making. The why is really rooted in what is your purpose? What is your cause? What do you believe in, and why should people buy into that? And Simon Sinek likes to use the example of Apple, but to be honest, I feel like I can use the example of any of the companies here. So when we think of an Apple, we think about if Steve Jobs had ever shown up and said, we build computers and they work really fast, they're very sleekly designed, here, you should buy one. Versus if Steve Jobs had said, and I'm sure he did at some point in his communications, we are a company that believes in challenging the status quo. And that's why everything we do, from the way we design our products to the way we market them and how individuals are able to seamlessly connect all of them, really reflects who they are as challengers of that same status quo. You're different when you use Apple, but we just happen to make computers. Here's one if you'd like to buy it. Just by changing the stream of which that is communicated, that completely changes the perspective of your audience from knowing what you do to really buying into the belief system as to why you do it. And in that case, you're not just bringing on board a customer, you're bringing on board a like-minded individual that's going to be loyal to you no matter what. But of course, I feel like this is something that can be deconstructed a little bit, right? The way I like to think about this a bit more deeply is when you're speaking about what, it's really about giving people a sense of just very basic clarity. This is my product, and maybe this is my business model. The how requires a little bit more discipline, right? So you are honing in on a specific skill that has allowed you to develop some kind of knowledge and expertise and the development of a unique selling proposition or a unique product as part of that. But the why is really where it gets a little bit more challenging, because that requires being consistent, not only in terms of what you are presenting to the world every day, but how to communicate and show what makes everything you do recognizable as coming from you. How do I know when I get a box of chocolates, even if it doesn't have the name on it, that it's from Midunu? How do I know when I see someone wearing a really lovely skirt walking down the street that that's from Christy Brown? That's where the consistency comes in. What makes you recognizable, and what is it about the aura that your products give off, the aura that your work gives off, that makes people want to work with you, that makes people want to give you their time and their money for the long term. So that isn't to discount either the what or the hows. Those are also very important, but that's just to stress on the fact that ultimately what you do serves as proof of what you believe. And in that, again, it's important to be mindful that people are not ultimately buying what you do, even though you might be producing a product. They are buying and they are staying with you as a company, as a business, because they are buying into why you do it. So I usually like to pause and get reactions to this, because even from a cultural standpoint, there might be different ideas or interpretations of what this means.
Just to throw this out there, does it apply in the Ghanaian context, and at what socioeconomic level do you think people start thinking about the why?
I think definitely from a customer perspective, there's less control that you have there. All you can control is how you're communicating, how you're telling your story. But if the priority in the market is also determined by, people might want to buy, people might want to go to a Midunu dinner but cannot afford to. People might want to buy Midunu chocolates but cannot afford to. People might want to eat healthier but cannot afford to. How can you change that? And I think that's an important point to bring up. And I think it's important to be mindful of the fact that starting with why, I think is useful in being able to tap into that story and being able to communicate that to an audience that is ready to support you for the longer term. But I think, to your point, we are in a market where those decisions to a large extent are inhibited by affordability. Every business, I think, is hoping to be in this to make money. But another way that I think is important to think about is, how do you want the people who are engaging with your product, engaging with your service, how do you want them to feel? Again, using the example of an apple, there are people that will literally buy an Apple product because of the projection of being aligned with this brand. How do you want people to feel when they are drinking Kawamoka coffee? such that they carry an entire coffee machine while going on vacation. I think that's really also at the core of what the why is intended to represent. And introduce or reintroduce yourself and your company, starting really with the why and testing out to see how that lands with the others in your group as well. I think that the storytelling piece could be one very powerful way of beginning that element of connection. And I'm sure between everyone has a different story, and there's so much value to our stories that we don't realize. So it's important to tap into that. This is really a process, and there is no one set why that lasts a lifetime. I think there's also room for it to shift and change, and being able to be mindful of that and take the time to actually take the time to process that and apply that to what you're doing is important as well. So thanks for sharing that. So just to kind of bring all of these together, I think what has really struck me in our conversation are a number of things. The first being the element where everyone is obviously coming with their different story and different perspective, which makes the why even richer and more valuable. But just from this last breakout, just seeing how many common threads there are as well. And I think that's really just the why at work. In seeing how many people from Selassie to Connie to Prince are aligned in some ways, even though they're working on different products. And I think the why is really lending itself here in not only you being part of this program, but also giving you an opportunity to maybe even find ways to collaborate with people who are in the same space as you as well. As I mentioned, I think this is really a starting point and should be considered a starting point. I think for all of us, there's work to continuously be done and there's constant introspection. But again, I'll reiterate, just seeing how this program has worked for previous cohorts to really lean into the value of GCIC, not in terms of not just these master classes or the opportunities that come from it, but more importantly from each other, because it's very rare to have that space where you can really connect with people who are going through the same things as you are. And I think that's something that makes GCIC quite special in providing these spaces.